So the Oscar nominations are here. We have been long speculating, long awaiting these nominations. We've been talking about it for quite a few weeks. And as we know, the Oscar nominations and also the voting period was delayed briefly because of the wildfires in Southern California, but they have finally been revealed publicly to the world. And after much speculation and hype and sort of just interest into what this field was going to look like, we now finally know what Oscar night will look like in terms of all the nominated films. And we're going to dive in and obviously unpack a lot of these big categories and share our takeaways and our reactions. But man, what's your general takeaway from everything that you saw with these Oscar nominations? What do you walk away with in terms of surprises, potential what the fucks? What are the narratives? Just like what's your overall feeling? And I guess just the opening snapshot of what you want to say about this year's Oscar nominations.
The ongoing what the fuck is still and remains Emilia Perez. What the fuck? I just what the fuck? It's a film that I think I can understand to a degree why some critics like it. Sure, like what you like, appreciate what you want to appreciate. 13 nominations from Emilia Perez is just I don't know. I don't know how we got here. It's very crazy to me that this is the landscape for Emilia Perez, man. I mean, only movies, a lot of movies do not get this many nominations, and particularly one that doesn't feel like it should belong with all the other 13 nominated kind of movies, La La Land and Titanic, and I don't know. It's just like Emilia Perez. Wow. Okay. That's one of the biggest what the fucks for me, of course. Second thing, I almost screamed from the mountaintops when I seen that Nickel Boys was here for Best Picture. I just was over the moon. Really liked that movie. My second favorite movie of 2024. Well, I seen Brutalist later, but yeah, one of my favorite movies of 2024. Man, I really love the movie and what it's about, and I didn't expect Sing Sing to get left out and Nickel Boys to be in. For a lot of the energy, I thought it was going to be flip flop. So very surprised there. It was another very important thing for me. Another kind of weird thing is some below the line stuff is just interesting, like Dune in costumes was kind of weird. Like, dang, Dune really ain't get no costumes. That was interesting. Or, just really random stuff. But I think a lot of the overall picture for me is, wow, this thing still continues to be kind of surprising. I'm still here making it in, but a lot of people were like, whoa. A lot of people didn't know what that movie was. I know we knew what that movie was, but a lot of people were like, what even is that film? And I feel like every year the Academy Awards usually does have that one where people are like, what is that? Usually it's more than one. Usually it's like 3 or 4 movies. Everybody like, what is this film? But this year, I think I'm still here. Is that movie? Is that film? Everyone's like, what is that? Where did this come from? Who is even Fernando Torres? What's happening there? So I'm still here. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm actually glad it made it in a lot of ways. I'm sad because that means Nickel Boy, or that means Sing Sing isn't here. But hearing what I'm hearing about the film, it sounds like it deserves to be here. So I'm glad they kind of found a film to put in here to kind of surprise people a little bit, to kind of throw people off. But man, those are right now in my initial thoughts. Those are the big takeaways for me. And long and by far is Emilia Perez. What the hell?
So, yeah, you pointed it out. Emilia Perez, 13 nominations, just one short of the all-time record for nominations for a single movie, which is 14, which is a 3-way tie held by All About Eve, Titanic, and La La Land, all accumulated 14 nominations. Here are some other films with 13 nominations. Just last year, Oppenheimer. 2017, The Shape of Water. 2002, Chicago. The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Forrest Gump. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Mary Poppins, Gone with the Wind, just a few of the names of films that also have 13 nominations. Now, I'm not saying that all of those movies are necessarily great movies. There are some movies in there that I'm not particularly a fan of either.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that 13 and having this amount of nominations equates to greatness. That is certainly a slippery slope of a conversation that I'm not necessarily going down that path. However, the number is still the number, and 13 nominations, it definitely signals some alarms, I think, for a lot of people. Like, wow, it's nominated in all of these major categories. It's pretty much showing up in many of the below the line categories, especially in a year that had some pretty stiff competition in those below the line categories with other movies like Wicked and Dune Part 2 and Nosferatu. But the fact that it was able to make its way in here, and we see some other films that went unnominated and got completely shut out, is it's a really interesting thing. But with Emilia Perez, because it has accumulated so much nominated power from the Oscars. I think now the big narrative that's already emerging is that this movie is now being positioned as this year's big Oscar villain. This is the villain of this year's Oscars, whether it deserves it or not. I'm
Yeah.
not here to necessarily decipher that, but I think that that's what the reality of it is, because we can't ignore the fact that this movie has faced significant backlash from the trans community,
Hmm.
significant backlash from portions of the Mexican community,
Yeah.
even online cinephiles, people on film Twitter or Letterbox. It's pretty much been outright rejected. I think at this point, it seems like the only people that love the film outright are these award voting bodies that we see
Hmm.
consistently recognize it over and over. And this has been a conversation that I've been having a couple of weeks now on the podcast, just the comparisons to other films we've seen this happen with, things
Yeah.
like Green Book and Crash, where you see that I think the Academy and even other awards voting bodies, they have a history of, I guess for lack of a better term, propping up specific movies and specific narratives and stories of what they think diversity and representation should look like and what it should
Hmm.
mean, when in
Hmm.
reality, that very piece of artwork actually offends the audience that it's trying to speak to, which is kind of the
Yeah.
weird irony of it all. This movie is trying to speak to the trans community and to Mexicans and Mexican Americans and all of those different things, but in reality, a lot of those people who the movie I think would be made for, they're not really fans of it. And so there's a big contingent of online fans and people that really follow this stuff who are not supporting this, but there's no denying just the momentum here and the fact that it has accumulated 13 nominations.
Hmm.
Other big winners also, The Brutalist picked up 10 nominations. Wicked also picked up 10 nominations. Both A Complete Unknown and Conclave walked away with 8 nominations. Anora with 6. Dune Part 2 with 5. The Substance also with 5. Nosferatu with 4. I'm Still Here and Sing Sing with 3. Many others that picked up multiple nominations. But there were also some films that went completely unnominated this year.
Hmm.
Films like
Hmm.
Challengers,
Yep.
films like The Piano Lesson, Hard
Yep.
Truths, Baby Girl, The Last Showgirl. These were movies that we've been talking about that we thought might have somewhat of a showing at this year's Oscars, but they were not to be represented whatsoever. But I want to go back to Emilia Perez for a second here,
Yeah.
since we're already there and having that conversation. So another aspect to this is the fact that Netflix has kind of put everything behind this movie, and we've seen them do this in the past traditionally with other
Hmm.
Academy Award nominated films that they've had under their slate, whether it be Roma or The Irishman, films
Hmm.
that were
Hmm.
heavily nominated but mostly went ignored. In fact, The
Hmm.
Irishman was nominated for 10 Oscars that year and won 0.
One
So
none. Yeah.
Netflix has obviously made a very strong case. They want to win Best Picture. We know that this is true. They typically find a movie each and every year that they just rally all of their resources and support behind.
Hmm.
And I want to ask you, because there are 13 nominations for this movie, which is just a lot of nominations. There is a big contingent of support behind this movie. There are a lot of narratives surrounding it that work in its favor. Do you think that this could potentially be the year that Netflix finally wins their coveted Best Picture Oscar that they've been seeking out, even with all of the narratives
Hmm.
about, not only the film itself, but also just Netflix as a platform,
Yeah.
just the fact that Netflix is known to be a disruptor in the industry. They have an aversion to movie theaters. There's been a lot of criticism about even their theatrical, or not theatrical, but their film slate, their cinematic slate that they put out, just
Mm.
the quality of movies.
Yeah.
And occasionally throughout the year, they'll go to different festivals and they'll buy movies like Emilia Perez to say like, oh, this is
Right.
the one that might have like really good potential for award season. But do you think that this might be the year that they could pick up the Best Picture Oscar?
I think this is the year out of all years where they do have the best chance for sure. Just the way these this award race has been going this year. A lot of people have been arguing this year in general is not as strong as other years. Thus, these nominees aren't as strong as some of the previous years we've had. I think that goes in my mind in favor of Emilia Perez, this kind of behemoth where that's getting so many nominations and is that we have seen being proven to win in other categories and other award shows. I think it's definitely if any year for the years Netflix has had so far, I think this is the year. I really do. The energy is just it's so high, it's so rampant. Continuously seeing, of course, the somewhat support of Zoe Saldana is still there. A lot of people a lot of people just are talking about it still, whether they like it or not. That discourse that we're talking about, in some ways, in my mind, helps the film. A lot of people, some of these movies, people could like more. Emilia Perez has been mentioned probably 50 million more times than Dune Part 2 has in the last 2 months. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes that helps the film in what it's going to do. And so, I think out of all years, if Netflix is going to get the dub out of Roma, out of The Irishman, out of anything else they put forward, the energy feels like Emilia Perez. If they're going to win, this is the year to do it.
And what do you think that the Academy is trying to say with that? Because I do strongly believe that every year we see in the films that are heavily nominated and also the films that end up winning Best Picture, I do feel that they are sort of a message about what the Academy considers important, what they're trying to convey to moviegoers and to the watchers of the Academy Awards. Like there's typically thematic resonance about just like where things are, not only with the country on a societal and political level, but just again also like what they're trying to communicate as a quote unquote important film. If Emilia Perez does win Best Picture, in spite of the fact that many people within the Academy itself have often rejected Netflix because of all of those things about it being a disruptor in the industry, because of the aversion to movie theaters and being starkly opposed to that whole system and being very streaming focused. If they do in fact award Emilia Perez with that award, I mean, what does that even say? That we think that the message in this movie is so important that we're willing to put aside our differences with our perceptions of Netflix as a platform and what it's done to the industry, especially after the writer strikes of last year and the fact that organizations like Netflix and Amazon and even Disney, I guess to a certain extent, were very much like vocal about some of the some of the apprehension about wanting to give fair wages and compensation to the writers and the people that produce these things of that nature. I mean, what are your thoughts just about that? Because that would also just be it would just be a very interesting dynamic, and I think a takeaway if the movie does end up walking away with Best Picture.
Yeah, and I think it'll also be very reflective of the voting body of the Academy Awards. Like it'll raise concerns for what they choose to care about, and I think that's what it is. It's like and depending on the time and what's convenient to them, they get to choose to pick what to care about. And in this moment, like you said, with the state of the country, with what's going on with Trump, with this being having a trans lead and kind of being about some trans topics, is this are you now saying, you know what, all the industry stuff with Netflix, this movie is way more important. This message is what, and part of the reason that even ideology kind of makes me mad and pisses me off a little bit is because this year in particular, almost every movie is actually really freaking radical. If you think about it, like Emilia Perez isn't the only one that's over here like making statements about things. Like Nickel Boys is making statements about things. Dune is actually making a lot of statements about. Honora is about a sex worker. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of radicalism that's happening in these films this year, and I'm like, why is this the one that we're choosing? Like, what is it about this particular one, about this particular subject matter is propelling you to root for this one the most out of all the Netflix movies that we've been through? What is it about this one? And so it still makes me question, like, sure, you can think of Emilia Perez as that film, but what about The Brutalist? Are we not talking about people who come from overseas, and we're talking about immigration and all of those things? Is that not part of the narrative too? And now we got to start asking some other questions. So what do we value where? I think it's just a very difficult question, I think, to have with the Academy Award voting body if they decide to go through that direction. And if some people do have the argument of like, this is the energy we feel, and this is how we fight back against what's happening in the country by making this movie win. And I think for a lot of us who watch these things, who care about these things, it's not going to feel like that to us. We're going to be like, oh, okay, that's how y'all feel, and it's not going to make the impact they think it's going to make. So it's really interesting, man, but that's how it feels.
It never really does make the impact that I think that they intend for it to, because as I mentioned, a lot of these movies that they do tend to prop up, the reality is that when they are viewed by audience members specifically that fall within the identities or the categories of who the film is about or the stories that they're trying to tell, I think typically the audiences look at it like, yeah, no, this one misses the mark. This isn't the type of story that I wanted. It doesn't do it justice. there are a lot of problematic things that we need to talk about and examine and unpack. And so often it's somewhat of a mistake. But I do think that one reality that we have to contend with is the fact that, again, this is a movie that has certainly, dealing with trans rights and trans issues and things of that nature, but just like where the conversation is around LGBTQIA
Right.
stories in general, and that being just such a hot button issue really for the past like 5 or 6 years. I mean, it's been
Yeah,
just like
for sure.
constant and steady. And I'm not here to place any particular matter or issue over one another. That's not what I'm
Exactly.
doing. But
Mm-hmm.
that has certainly just taken, I think, a huge priority in terms of the types of conversations that happen on a day-to-day basis, and then how that obviously influences the art that we're obviously consuming on a year-to-year basis, especially when it comes time to talk about, the most artistic films, the most challenging films that are dealing with a lot of these real subjects, these real stories, or at least the stories that are attempting to portray more realistic topics and ideas that come from certain communities, underrepresented and marginalized communities. But that LGBTQ conversation has been very, very prominent and somewhat dominant, I think, over the past few years. Emilia Perez kind of falls within that. Then you add on top of the fact that there is somewhat of an immigrant aspect to it, somewhat of an immigrant story. There are, multiple countries. It's a French film, but it's all in the Spanish language. There's aspects about that, and just like where that's signaling where the country is right now. There's obviously a ton to talk about with those things. But I will say this in terms of just like this movie in comparison to the others, Emilia Perez is so divisive that
Yeah.
we can't forget that with Best Picture specifically, just this category,
Mm-hmm.
there is the ranked choice voting that they do, the preferential ballot that they do, in
Yes.
which it's not an up or a down vote on a specific film. Everything gets ranked. And so because a movie like Emilia Perez is so divisive, I don't know if there are going to be enough people who mark it as a 1
One.
on their ballot
Yeah.
versus those who mark it as a 6 or a 7 or an 8.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas there might be certain movies that have enough 2s and 3s from all of the people voting
To
that
win.
actually outweighs, the few people that do vote Emilia Perez 1 or do vote the Brutalist 1, because I think the Brutalist is also divisive
Yeah.
in some respects. There have been things that have come out, but
AI stuff. Yeah.
films that have not been divisive pretty much across the board are movies like Conclave, hasn't really been that divisive.
It
A
hasn't.
Complete Unknown, not
Yeah.
divisive at all.
Mm-hmm.
To a certain respect, I would say even Anora, not really that divisive.
Yeah.
These are movies that most people say, I really like it. If you saw it, it's like, I really like that movie. And so if enough people vote 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 for those movies, and if it gets enough of those votes, then the actuality is that you'll see a situation where maybe one of these movies can come from behind and actually win Best Picture because not enough people marked The Brutalist 1 or 2. Not enough people marked Emilia Perez 1 or 2 because there's just such divisive feelings about those films. Even Wicked, I say, is also kind of a divisive film where it probably won't
Yeah,
get
for
enough of
sure.
those
It
types
is.
of votes, And so that's something to just remember. Like, this field is so wide open this year and so unpredictable and just so different from last year where Oppenheimer steamrolled over everything, but this year that's
Yeah.
just not the case.
Mm-hmm.
There's really it's hard to call exactly where things are going to go, especially in this Best Picture category. So I'm still not entirely sure of just like where the energy is, and I don't even know if any of these precursors that we have left are going to signal
They're not
anything
helpful.
significant. I don't know if it's going
They're
to
not
really mean
helpful.
anything. In terms of Best Picture, we went 8 for 10. You mentioned the fact that I'm Still Here and also Nickel Boys did make it in, which are somewhat, I would say, some come from behind winners in this
Yeah.
particular category. They definitely had a lot of momentum over the past few weeks that they were gaining, but a lot of people predicted Sing Sing would get in, including us. Also had A Real Pain here, which also was left out of this category, but they did make it in here. I just got to say, though, for Sing Sing, I love where it is represented, but I got to say, and I've been saying this like for the past couple of months now, I think A24 fumbled this campaign. I
I
think
agree.
the fact that it's not in Best Picture is kind of ridiculous. It should have been here, but this
I agree.
bungled release campaign and not making it available for months and months and just trying to like get it in at the last 25th hour with the last, sort of showings in theaters and putting it in prisons, it just didn't turn out to be enough for Sing Sing. And we can't also forget to mention, and I think that this is also true in addition to that they put all of their support behind the Brutalist. That's really
Yeah,
where their attention
exactly.
lied. And so,
Hmm.
those two combining factors, I think, is what kept Sing Sing out of here. But I don't know, if I'm A24, I would kind of be kicking myself in the leg, because you could have had two movies represented in this category as opposed to
Easy,
one, but they just didn't
easy.
they didn't go that direction for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just don't know why. I don't know what's up with that release strategy. Even like you said, that last 25th hour, it wasn't going to do anything for it was like that last minute. I'm like, so the day before, the 2 days before nominations come out, you put the movie in theaters, and it was very frustrating for a lot of people, particularly even friends in New York, because they didn't reopen it in New York. Actually, you couldn't go see it in New York unless you went to like Angelica or something. It was in no AMC's in New York the weekend they reopened it. So, and a lot of people were like, oh man, I'm trying to go see it, but there's nowhere it's playing. And I'm like, how the table flipped is still crazy, because now there's still people who can't go see the film. It was just a really weird thing happening with Sing Sing, man. And I hate that A24 did that. Did that to that film, because it deserves so much more than what it's getting. And so yeah, man, it really does, rub me the wrong way a little bit. Happy that they A24 could do something with the Brutalist. Happy Brutalist has 10 nominations, but Sing Sing definitely should have been part of this Best Picture race, man. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I want to just quickly point out for I'm Still Here. Again, just a lot of momentum, I think, really after the Golden Globes. And I did see the movie. It is a really, really good movie. I am glad that it's here. I would have, liked to see, a couple of others in here
Mm-hmm.
as well. And if I am ranking that, to be honest, if I am ranking these movies, like power ranking, like what
Mm-hmm.
would be put out versus what would be put in, I wouldn't even take out I'm Still Here. In
Yeah.
actuality, just for me, I would take out Wicked personally and put in something
Mm-hmm.
else. But
Yeah.
the fact that it did make it in here is pretty incredible. And that is it's a really strong movie overall. But yeah, Sing Sing, that whole thing is kind of rubbing me the wrong way. And I was
I don't
fearful of
like
it
it.
for months, just
Yeah.
knowing that this was possibly going to be a likely outcome. And unfortunately, it did turn out to be that way. Moving on to Best Director. So here in this category, we both went 4 out of 5 in our predictions. You actually included Coralie Farge, and you got that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
correct. I did not include her. I included James Mangold. You didn't include him, but we
Mm-hmm.
have both included Edward Berger for Conclave, and he didn't make it in at all, which is a
Which
big, big
is
surprise. I definitely did not see that coming.
what?
I don't know. I don't know who etched him out. I don't know who would be at the fifth slot and probably pushed him down to the sixth, spot on the outside looking in. But out of this category, we have Jacques Audiard for Emilia Perez, Sean Baker for Honora, Brady Corbet for The Brutalist, Coralie Farge for The Substance, and James Mango for A Complete Unknown. Uh,
Wow.
it's still a stacked field. This is a crazy
Yeah, it's hella
category.
stacked.
All of the direction from these folks included here, it's phenomenal, and in their own rights, these are really, really incredible, I think, just directorial efforts from these people. And the fact that we were able to get, a female representative here in Coralie Farge for the work that she did on The Substance, that's nice to see, because we know the Academy historically just doesn't do that. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
very happy that she did make it in here. And James Mangold, I had a big suspicion that he would make it in. He's just
Yeah.
such a powerhouse name, and
Mm-hmm.
resonates with so many people in the Academy. But Edward Berger not making it in for Conclave is definitely, I think, a big surprise out of this category.
Yeah, it's just like really like he was getting the nomination. And again, this is another reason why these precursor awards have not been helpful this year at all. Because again, right behind Emilia Perez was Conclave most of the time. Conclave was right there knocking on the door, like, we're nominated too for all these things, directors, certain actors. And here we get to the Academy Awards, and it's like, yep, no Edward Berger. I don't know, it just really it throws me off a little bit. But like you said though, it's almost like this is still a stack five. What is there to do? Like what can you do? It's really interesting, man. It made me think about what you were saying, like, will the Academy Awards ever make the six? Because in my head I'm like, dang, he easily would have been the six, but also
Yeah.
like I still like the idea too of like, dang, I like five though. It's just a weird back and forth I go through. It's like, dang, I feel like he should be here, but it's unfortunate, man. But what are you to do? What are you to do?
And this is now also officially the second time Denis Villeneuve goes unnominated
I
for
don't
his
even want to talk
work
about it. I
on
don't
the
even want to talk
Dune
about it.
films. He was not nominated for Best Director for Dune Part 1, not nominated for his direction on Dune Part 2. However, in both instances, Dune was indeed nominated for Best Picture, which is another thing that it was able to get this year. But Denis Villeneuve, I mean, I mean, what's there to say? We've said a
What's
lot
there to
about
say,
him
bro?
so far, but it's quite uncomfortable even to just think about that somebody can do so much, can mount such an incredible feat of filmmaking and just go ignored. And I just don't understand why. One aspect could try to ration like, well, if he was nominated for the first one, it's like, well, that was the time that we acknowledged him. He's not going to get that acknowledgement. But
Yeah.
he didn't even get that. He didn't even get acknowledged for the first one. There might still, I guess, maybe perhaps be a chance that he can be nominated for Dune Messiah. Let's just assume.
Return of the King. They gonna
Let's
Return of the King.
assume that they'll do that.
Ugh.
I even have a hard time believing that because if you don't know this, Dune Messiah is weird. It's very
It's weird.
challenging.
Yep.
I don't know how he's going to adapt that. It's just not going to be as accessible as these first two movies. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's the reality. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's going to turn some people off. So I'm even having a hard time believing that he'll get acknowledgement for that movie when it comes out, unless they make some significant changes to the story that we just can't anticipate.
Yeah. It's such a weird feeling to have because I do remember us talking about when Dune 1 was in the awards race. We knew it was going to get a lot of below the line stuff. And we were like, okay, some of that other stuff, directing, best picture, maybe we're waiting on part 2 to come out and to finish the story. And now that I feel like we've completed the book, it's like, okay, our time should be here. And then it's not here. It's just like, okay, so it's never going to happen in my mind. It's just like, oh, okay, so it's out the window. Like, if it doesn't happen now, this year, it's not going to happen. And so it's just really weird because now in my mind, and it's Denis Villeneuve, right? And in a lot of ways, you know how long it took Christopher Nolan to get his dub. You know what I'm saying? And in my mind, I'm like, dang, this is sad. It sucks. But Denis Villeneuve is like that. And it's like maybe he just has to get it later down the line. Like this
The
just
Make
isn't.
Good Award, yeah.
Yeah,
Later
the
down
Make Good Award. This isn't the time for him, and maybe it has to be something else. But it does suck that you have this big body of work in Doom Part 2. It's doing so much and on so many levels, excelling at so many things, and it's just like you're really not gonna get recognized for a lot of this stuff. And yeah, it's just unfortunate, man. Because again, I thought I was holding my breath after Part 1 came out. I was like, okay, y'all got nominated for some stuff. Y'all not gonna win everything, cool. And now Part 2 is here. It's like, well, damn, y'all really not gonna get nominated for stuff now. So yeah, it's been a weird place for me in my heart. But yeah, maybe later down the line something will change.
Hell, I mean, yes, it took Chris Nolan a long time. It took Martin Scorsese forever. It
Yeah,
took him 35
a
years.
hell a long
They
time for
waited
Martin
until The
Scorsese,
Departed after all the masterpieces that he put out. I mean, even Steven Spielberg, I mean, he was pissed when he missed out on Jaws, and it took all the way until Schindler's
which
List,
is
that's
do
a,
you know what Jaws lost to? What did Jaws lose to?
I'm not sure.
Because that's crazy.
That's
Jaws
pretty
losing just like blows my mind.
yeah, Jaws redefined literally all movies.
Yeah,
But he lost out that year, and he was pretty upset about it. So yeah, I mean, this has played out before, where sometimes like directors, even for their best work, and actors
yeah,
have gone through it too. For their best work,
for
it's
sure.
not. That's what they're not getting anything for that. But okay, a few years down the line, you put out something else that's considered a banger. We can try to make good with you on the second attempt or this third attempt or whatever the case may be. Let's move on to Best Actors. So in this category, we have Adrian Brody for The Brutalist, Timothy Chalamet for A Complete Unknown, Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing, Ray Fiennes for Conclave, and Sebastian Stan for The Apprentice. We both went 5 for 5 on these predictions, pretty much predicted these all correctly. Absolutely stacked category. This is
Yeah,
incredible. I
it's
think
crazy.
we kind of knew what the energy was looking like for these particular nominees, and it turned out that was absolutely the case. Now there is something to unpack here though, because I think we talked about this a little bit with the Golden Globes after Adrian Brody won. It felt like him and Timothy Chalamet have been the two front runners for a long time, and I love
Yeah.
the other ones here: Coleman, Ray Fiennes, Sebastian Stan. They all have their own individual talking points that we can address. But Adrian Brody, Timothy Chalamet has felt like the two horse race for a while now. However, this AI controversy with The Brutalist is it's happening.
That's it.
It's a thing.
It's a thing.
And if you don't know about it, basically the movie has found itself at the center of some new controversy because the film's editor basically revealed that AI was used to enhance the Hungarian language that was spoken by not only Adrian Brody, but also Felicity Jones as well. They noted that it's a really, really difficult dialect to crack. It's a very difficult language to speak. And the accent is really, really hard to crack as well. Adrian Brody is part Hungarian, if I'm not mistaken, but that's not his native language. So they use some AI to help, sort of smooth some of those things over and enhance and get that correct. And that came out right before the nominations dropped, which is, it's no coincidence at all. Somebody is somebody's out for the Brutalist for sure. I think
Somebody's out to get them
somebody's definitely out
boys.
to get this movie. So I think it's a bit more unsure now between these
Yeah.
two. But what are your thoughts on just like the AI aspect of it and how that might influence this race now?
Yeah, I actually think it might be a big thing in the same way we've been talking about Emilia Perez. It just has become a controversial thing that I feel like some of the people before who might put Adrian Brody as 1 or 2 might be like, ooh, maybe you might be a 3 now. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like some people may not a lot of people do feel some type of way about AI and how it's used in film and specifically generative AI, tends to be the issue here. And so, uh, I really don't know, because for a while I did feel like Adrian Brody and Timothy Chalamet, but the longer time goes on and things like this come out, I'm like, hmm, I wonder what Coleman Domingo's thinking. I wonder how Coleman Domingo feels, because I don't know. I think it's more open before than it was. I don't think it's as two way with Adrian and Timothy as it was before the controversy. Is it still possible they're top two? For sure, still very possible, but I don't think it's as sure as it was before. And I definitely think there's some potential for Coleman Domingo and even Sebastian Stan to knock on the door ever so slightly. We'll have to see.
Did you see Timothy Chalamet on SNL by any chance?
Yeah, I did.
He was dynamite, incredible.
He's
He
been
he
killing
nailed
it.
it.
He's been killing everything. He's been killing everything.
He's having a really really fun sort of press tour leading up to this award show, and that's something to be said about it. I mean, he's not, he performed as well on SNL. He's not going to get a recording contract or anything, but he's having a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and sort of portraying and singing these Bob Dylan songs and just the work that he put into it, the whole narrative about him learning to play guitar for 5 years and how now Bob Dylan has become a source of inspiration for him. He has a lot going for him. This would be a it would be a really interesting turn of events, because he would,
Mm-hmm.
if he does indeed win, he would now become technically, alongside Adrian Brody, the youngest actor to win Best Actor, because right now he's 29 years old, the same age
Yeah.
that Adrian Brody was the first time that he won for The Pianist all those
Pianist.
years
Mm-hmm.
ago. So that would be a
That's
very
interesting.
ironic state of events.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to play out in that way, but he's definitely, I think he's doing all the things right that you need to do in terms of just the campaign that you go on to make sure
Mm-hmm.
people know about your performance and to get that momentum behind you, just to see if he can pull this off and if he can potentially win. But a part of me does feel like he is so young, and it
Yeah.
just might be a situation in which it's like you'll
Kind
have
of
plenty more
Austin Butler-y.
opportunities.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of the same feel Austin Butler had with Elvis. Yeah, it's like the
yeah,
same
for
feel.
sure,
Yeah.
for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's already been nominated in like 6 films that have gotten Best Picture nominations. Like, he's been a part of that pedigree already, so
Yeah.
there's no doubt he'll be in this category again. But I don't know, man. It's a tough year overall. But even these other ones, you can say a lot about Coleman Domingo, obviously, and what he did for
Mm-hmm.
Sing Sing. Ray Fiennes is incredible in Conclave. He's probably maybe our greatest living actor to never win an Academy Award, which is still crazy to me that he hasn't won anything. And then Sebastian
Blows my mind.
Stan, I have praised him a lot for just the work on The Apprentice, and the fact that he
Mm-hmm.
was able to get in here is just really, really incredible to see. But speaking of stacks, let's talk about Best Actress. So in this category, we have Cynthia Erivo for Wicked, Carla Sofia Gascon for Emilia Perez, Mikey Madison for Honora, Demi Moore for The Substance, and Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here. Potentially the most stacked category and potential nominees that could have been in this category out of any award this year, because we both went 4 for 5 out of this one, so not perfect. I think we both had predicted Marianne Jean Baptiste could potentially get in here for
Mm-hmm.
her work on Hard Truth, but she did not make it in here. But she's not the only name that's missing. Nicole Kidman for Baby Girl is not here. Angelina
Yep.
Jolie for Maria. Kate Winslet for Lee. Tilda Swinton for The Room Next Door. Saoirse Ronan for The Outrun. Pamela
Those names are
Anderson,
crazy.
The Last Showgirl. Amy Adams
Yeah.
even for Night Bitch. She was in conversations for a
Mm-hmm.
while. It was just a really, really, really competitive year. But Fernanda Torres seems to be the one that probably became somewhat of the later conversation come from behind winner. And I think that Golden Globe narrative, that conversation, and that win at the
Mm-hmm.
Golden Globes did a lot for her. And so maybe gone are the days that we joke about the Golden Globes not being a serious precursor,
New
because
globes.
for a
New
couple of
globes.
these
Yeah.
categories, it turns out that it actually probably favored them quite significantly here. But what are your thoughts just on this field and where things stand?
Yeah, like you said, it's super stacked to me. There's a lot happening here, and I think Fernanda Torres, the same way she has a story again coming off the Golden Globes. Demi Moore, she still has that thing, that story she's talking about, where the movie very self reflective of her career and where she's came from. That's still a thing that people, even the idea that Corley Farge gets in for the substance makes me open my ear up a little bit even more to how they feel about Demi Moore as actress. Like, because if that, I don't know, some of these things are indicative. Like when Emma won for best actress, we were like, poor things, what's what's going on here? Or anytime it's like you gotta perk your ear up a little bit, like, I wonder what's going to come after this, how the night goes. So, I don't know if Fernando Torres, Demi Moore, they're still in it. I still really like Mikey Madison, man. She's had like this weird, like, why aren't we talking about Mikey Madison thing that I still can't figure out sometimes when it comes to talk about these award shows. Like, what are we doing? She's right here. She did really good, but she also suffers, I think, from the being young thing that we were just talking about with Timothy Chalamet. In a way, she kind of suffers from the same thing. She did so good and she's so young. We're like, she'll probably be here again at some point. But it's like, dang, but she was so good in the film, and she's the titular, like it's literally named after her. So yeah, it's so interesting, I think, to see how this race is going to go. And you cannot count out Carla Sofia Gascon.
Nope.
It's impossible to count her out.
You cannot.
Impossible. Whatever Emilia Perez is nominated in, you can't count it out because it might win. And so it's just going to be a crazy. All of this is making the Academy Awards so much more interesting to watch this year, though, too, because some of this stuff is not only super competitive, but it's like it's also like interesting on what the outcome is going to be in the most interesting ways. And yeah, you just don't know, man. We'll have to see.
I mean, in reality, out of all of the nominations that Emilia Perez got, this is the one I'm not mad at all. Carla Sofia Gascon, incredible in that movie. I think the best part of that movie for the most part. So I'm actually happy to see her represented here. But in general, yeah, it's tough. I think Fernanda Torres, she was amazing, and I'm Still Here carries that movie completely. She's in nearly every scene of the film. And the reality is, I love Demi Moore, and I love what she did in The Substance, and she feels like a heavy favorite at this point in time. But if I'm being honest, all of these other people in this category kind of had to do more than she had to do in their respective movies. And a part of that is because The Substance becomes somewhat of a two-hander at a certain part of the movie with Margaret Qualley and what she has to do with the film. And that's not taking anything away from Demi Moore. Again, I think she was incredible in the film. That scene where she's debating on going out for the night is phenomenal. It's incredible acting. But everybody here just had to do so much. Mikey Madison had to do a ton in Anora, and Carla Sofia Gascon had to do a ton in Emilia Perez. Cynthia Erivo and Wicked had to do a lot of stuff. So yeah, it's a really, really tough year for this category, as it's been for the past few years. This has typically been one of the more competitive categories I think we've seen emerge over the past 3 or 4 years of the Oscars. And so, yeah, it'll be quite the race, especially when we get to the SAGs in a couple of weeks and they're on after. Let's move on to actor in a supporting role. In this category, Yuri Borisov for Anora, Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain, Edward Norton for A Complete Unknown, Guy Pearce for The Brutalist, and Jeremy Strong for The Apprentice. And so I predicted this entire category correctly. You went 4 for 5. The only one that was left out, unfortunately, was Clarence Macklin for Sing Sing. I guess some other notable quote-unquote snubs we can just point out. No Denzel Washington for Gladiator 2. No Jonathan Bailey for Wicked, who did pick up a Screen Actors Guild nomination. Stanley Tucci for Conclave. Peter Skarsgård for September 5 were other names that were circling. But right now we have these 5 that are in contention. Kieran Culkin has been the heavy favorite for most of the season. I think we both kind of still feel that way. Also fun to see him and Jeremy Strong face off in this category. Succession brothers. Once again competing against each other. They did the same exact thing with Succession, competing in all the best actor categories, and here they are again. Ironically enough, competing against each other. But yeah, any thoughts on the best supporting actor category and where things stand?
Not too much, man. You pretty much said it. I think Kieran Culkin, in my mind, is still the front runner here. Everybody loves his performance. It's such a good performance here. But yeah, Clarence Macklin was like my hope. I was like, dang, he hopes again. But now, of course, they're not gonna make it in. They don't even get the best picture. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, of course, Clarence Macklin not gonna be in here. So it makes sense to me that Jeremy Strong made it in here. But I really like that narrative that you just said, like these Succession brothers fighting. I think it's fun. It's crazy how history repeats itself in cool ways sometimes with these award shows, man. It's kind of what it's about sometimes. It's stuff like this. I think it's dope. Like, y'all, there's TV to film, and it's like y'all still here together. It's just the crazy. I hope they do something in the night. You know what I mean? Like, I hope they play on that somewhere in the Academy Award show. Like, look, guys, like, I don't know how they do it, but it'll be a really cool thing for them to pay attention to. But yeah, not too much to add.
Oh, when Kieran wins the award, Jeremy Strong should get up and say, "I'm the eldest
I'm
boy.
the eldest boy.
I'm the eldest boy." He should get
I'm
up in
the
the
eldest
middle of the
boy.
audience and yell and just completely shut shit down.
I would love that.
That would be an
That's
incredible
too
moment.
funny.
But yeah, that's life imitating art, as we see from that show. So it's really, really cool to see here. I will point out, although Clarence Macklin did not get nominated here, he did get nominated in the Best Original Screenplay category because he's credited as a writer for Sing Sing.
I
So
love that.
if Sing Sing were to turn out to win, he could still actually turn out to be an Oscar winner, even though he's not acknowledged for his performance in the film. He is acknowledged for his writing on that movie, which is like another cool point, at least that Sing Sing was able to pick up as well. Moving on to Best Supporting Actress, we have Monica Barbaro for A Complete Unknown, Ariana Grande for Wicked, Felicity Jones for The Brutalist, Isabella Rossellini for Conclave, and Zoe Saldana for Emilia, Perez. And so we both actually went 4 for 5 in this category. I think we had the same predictions down the board. The one we got wrong, Jamie Lee Curtis, not here. Although she's been having a lot of momentum over these past couple of precursors, got nominated for the Screen Actors Guild Award. It just didn't translate here. And it just didn't get her in here. And also other people that were not nominated. Danielle Deadweiler, unfortunately, is not here for The Piano Lesson. Margot Qualley for The Substance. Again, kind of another stacked year, another stacked category, but that kind of threw things off. But here again, another really strong, solid 5 contenders. The Felicity Jones aspect of it, I don't know, that Brutalist AI controversy might really still hurt her. Ariana Grande, Wicked, she's obviously had a ton of support and a lot of energy behind her for just her incredible performance in that movie. But Zoe Saldana still kind of feels like big, heavy favorite front runner, in this category. I don't know who her close second is. I guess it probably would be Ariana Grande if I had to pick a close second out of everybody. Monica Barbaro kind of, as the Complete Unknown train has been steadily moving, I think she also kind of creeped in here a little bit as well. But I think Zoe Saldana still just has a lot of momentum to ultimately win this award. Again, out of all 13 nominations, this is probably one of the few that I don't think anybody's going to be upset at if she does turn out to be the winner that night.
Yeah. I agree, man. She's really good in that film. But this is another category. Like, whoever wins, honestly, I'd be happy with it. I like all of these performances a lot. I think everybody was good in their own right. And so Felicity Jones did surprise me, just because, again, we hadn't been seeing her be as strong in some of the precursor awards. But now, again, it's like, I guess they meant nothing. But I'm really happy to see her here. I really liked her performance in The Brutalist. But the AI stuff, like you said, I think it might, we'll have to see the day of how the energy is and how that feels, but it might come back to bite her and hurt her chances as well. But yeah, another category, I think it's going to Zoe, but anybody that wins, I would not be mad at all.
Let's move on to the screenplay categories. For Best Adapted Screenplay, we have A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Emilia Perez, Nickel Boys, and Sing Sing in this category. So Best Adapted Screenplay, both of us predicted this entire category correctly. I guess the one big snub that people have pointed out is Dune Part 2. And we also talked about that a little bit last week. Like, maybe it could potentially get in there, but I think we went with our better judgment on this one, and it looks like that turned out to be the case. Very, very strong contenders here. And the fact that Nickel Boys was able to get not only a screenplay nomination, but in addition to that, the best director or the best picture a nomination as well. Definitely good signs for that movie, making sort of this late run into the game, even though it's not been seen by a ton of people. I think that's been working against it, but the fact that it's here, it's a really cool thing. I often credit these 2 awards, Best Adapted and Best Original, for being kind of the cool kid awards, where they can do something a little bit different. The movie that win here, or the screenwriters that win here, they probably wouldn't win Best Picture, but that's okay, because this is still like a very, very major award to win for a screenplay. But yeah, any thoughts on adapted screenplay and where things stand?
No, this is just a really strong category. It feels really good seeing these movies, I think, be here for the most part, and they all make sense. Nothing is too surprising here. But yeah, just happy for Nickel Boys and Sing Sing, man. I'm always rooting for Black cinema. It's not every year I think we get 2. I mean, I guess I would call them big. They're only, that's definitely a interesting take. I don't know how big you can really call them, but 2 big Black films in the Academy Awards, and a lot of people were afraid after seeing Sing Sing, after seeing Nickel Boys, that these movies wouldn't make it at all, just because we're not used to some of these films making it all the time. So I'm just really happy to see both of them be in this category. It's like, we got 2. Like, that's the thing I said. I was like, we got 2. I was just really happy to see that, man, because they're very important films. Yeah, and I'm happy they're here.
And then in Best Original Screenplay, we have Anora, The Brutalist, A Real Pain, September 5, and The Substance. You predicted this entire category correctly. I got 4 out of 5. I put in Challengers that did not make it. And Challengers, in fact, was completely shut out. But that was my one sort of dark horse picked that did not make it in. Also, I guess another snub to point out, No Hard Truths is not in here, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
also a little unfortunate. But yeah, Original Screenplay, Anora, The Brutalist, A Real Pain, September 5, and The Substance, which, love The Substance. Screenplay, I don't think is necessarily the strongest element of that
Yeah,
movie, if I'm being
yeah.
honest. A lot of that
Mm-hmm.
film is energy, visuals,
Mm-hmm.
scenes, vibes, emotions and reactions and close-ups, all sorts of like very technical things that it certainly should be acknowledged for. Even the performances. Screenplay is interesting. I think my two favorite scripts of this year are Anora and A Real Pain. Like those two
Yeah.
scripts are incredible, and even The Brutalist itself also has an incredible script. But my two favorite have been Anora and A Real Pain. Probably Anora, I think, is undoubtedly my personal favorite. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the one that I want to win, and I hope it does win. I'm not ready to call it quite yet for original
Yeah.
screenplay because this one it seems like it's a little bit close, but
Mm-hmm.
again, it's a very strong field of 5 here. September 5 is also like an interesting one that makes it in. Certainly a dialogue heavy movie, not without its own controversy as well.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But this is like the one that it was acknowledged for, considering that it was not nominated for Best Picture as well. So definitely an interesting field across the board for original screenplay.
Yeah, it's a it's in September 5 is so interesting because it's not necessarily a movie about movies. You know how the Academy Awards usually like movies about movies, but it is about like production and having to put the thing out into the world. And I think that definitely helps in its favor. Like you said, not without its own controversy, but it's a well made film. A lot of energy behind that movie as well. But I also agree that The Substance. I was like, even thinking about screenplay, like I thought about the same thing. I was like, it's not really a screenplay type film because it was funny. My litmus test for not whether original or adapted, just in my head, amazing screenplay. I'm like Social Network. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, how does this? How do we make that make sense? It's like Substance. I don't know. It's really interesting to see it here. But yeah, honestly, I can't call it. I think I agree with you, and I would want Anora to get the dub here. But I don't know. I don't even know what my prediction is yet. I think I do like Anora the best out of these nominees, though, for sure. I agree with you on that.
For sure. So those are the major ones. Let's talk about some of these other awards. We can kind of breeze through a few of these. Let's go to cinematography. So in this category we have The Brutalist, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, Maria, and Nosferatu. I think that this is the sole nomination that Maria was able to get. Nosferatu
Mm-hmm.
coming in here and picking up quite a few nominations, including the cinematography one. Notably missing from this category, no Conclave, which is a bit of a
Yeah.
surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Also, no Nickel Boys, which is
Crazy.
a very, very interesting choice. I don't love that movie as much as other people do, but there's one thing you
Mm-hmm.
can't deny is that it has incredible cinematography. I mean, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable stuff that Ramel Ross and his team did with just the
Mm-hmm.
cinematography of that film. So that was a big gaping omission, I would say, especially when you see other films like Amelia Perez here, where it's like I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, but this is also a tough one. The two favorites to me feel like Doom Part 2 and The Brutalist. Those
Yeah.
kind of feel like the two heavy favorites at this particular point. I don't know where we're gonna go though. I do believe Doom won this award back in 2022, I believe, at that award show when it was
Yeah, that sounds
nominated.
right.
But I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
it'll pick it up again because they may have. It may be a thing where it's like, oh, we already acknowledged you. We already had Doom win this award. We're not necessarily going to give it again here. And The Brutalist again, heavy favorite in most of its categories that it's nominated for this year, considering that it does have 10 nominations.
Yeah, man, you talk about that Nickel Boys, kind of stuff here. I agree with that. The other one I always I kind of kept in the back of my mind too was Loki Alien. Alien Romulus shot very well.
Yeah,
Crazy,
sure.
crazy looking movie Alien Romulus is actually. So that's another kind of snub I have on my radar a little bit. I will say, given your point that Dune 1 might have won, the Brutalist, the beginning, the opening of that film gets a lot of praise. A lot of people talk about the Statue of Liberty shot. You know what I mean? Like it's a thing that people talk about quite frequently with the Brutalist. So I don't. But even that now might have some AI repercussions too, because I remember hearing they might have to have some AI with certain buildings or
Yeah, the
something. I don't know,
architecture, some aspects of the
architecture
architecture
stuff.
in the movie wasn't completely made by AI, but I think that there was some AI
Hmm.
references that ended up
Yeah,
making it into the movie for sure. Yeah.
yeah, and so it's like, is that gonna go against it? I don't. This AI controversy is like throwing me off a little bit because I don't know what the body is going to think about it. That's the hard part. Is like, okay, how do these people think? But I still agree those are the two front runners. Crazy to see Maria here. I actually just watched that recently. I was like, oh shoot, Maria made it in just to cinematography. So yeah, man, who knows? I'm actually not sure where this is going to go either, 100%. But I think I agree that Brutalist and Doom Part Two are the front runners.
You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it with this AI stuff, this is what I'm going to say. The reality is,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a part of the academy, you're working in the industry, you're a filmmaker,
Right.
more than likely,
Right.
you have used AI on your movie. It's actually extremely likely. It's
Mm-hmm.
very present in a lot of movies these days, more than we realize. In
Yeah.
fact, if nobody ever said anything about the Brutalist, we wouldn't know. That wouldn't
We
even
would
be a
know.
conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Emilia Perez uses AI in the movie. People don't even know that, but that's also another conversation that's been bubbling up. This happens all the time. And so,
Yeah.
because the Academy is made up of the people that make these movies, I actually don't know if that's going to mean anything at all. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's
they
going to
won't
influence
care.
anything because it's like,
I
well,
hope so.
we use this shit, guys. Like, what are we
Hmm.
talking about? Like, we're gonna hold something against a movie because it used some AI technology, where in fact, like, we are the perpetuators of the usage of that particular thing. Now, it's
Hmm.
different. It's levels to it, of course. Like, if we're talking about an AI script is being generated, yeah, that's a whole different
Yeah.
thing. But in the instances that it's been brought up, it's
Hmm.
with respect to, like, oh, it's been used to do small things here and there, like these are the performances, but there might have
Yeah.
been some
Tidying up.
accompaniment, some
Yeah.
tidying up, all
Hmm.
happening in post-production. None of this is happening on sets. It's mostly
Right.
in post. So I'm not ready to say that it's a non-factor, but now that I am thinking about it, I'm thinking about the people that actually vote on this shit. I don't know
Hmm.
if it'll matter or not. So it'll be interesting to see if that turns out to be something. I'm always curious to see also, like, the anonymous Academy Award voters who decide to speak to
Hmm.
publications every year and talk shit about why they didn't vote for something. I'm curious to see what those look like this year. Who's able to get some scoops from inside the Academy? Another one I want to point out: film editing, best film editing. Here we have Anora, The Brutalist, Conclave, Emilia Perez, and Wicked. So, film editing, we have historically seen, has been a very, very influential category. Not
Important
always,
category.
but
Yeah.
traditionally, it has somewhat signaled who wins Best Picture.
Hmm.
And so, there's a couple of things to think about as it relates to this particular category. It's only 5 nominees, not the 10. So, you won't see half of the nominees in Best Picture even nominated in this category. And so already that raises my eyebrows, like, oh,
Hmm.
a
Let me
complete
see what y'all looking
unknown
at.
a complete
Yeah.
unknown is not nominated for film editing.
Hmm.
Huh? Will it win Best Picture? I don't know. But kind of the big, I mean, I want to say big four, but it's really big five. I mean, Honora, The Brutalist, Conclave, Emilia Perez, and Wicked are all kind of the big
Hmm.
five. They're all like heavy favorites for a lot of different things. But also, again, another missing film as it relates to the editing of it is Dune Part Two, and the fact that
Hmm.
Wicked gets in here as opposed to a movie like Dune Part Two. I said at the Golden Globes after we talked about that was a likely thing that could occur. I did bring up
Yeah.
Wicked could get nominated for film editing, and
Hmm.
I'm not happy about it. I'm somewhat shocked that it's here, but that's not my biggest gripe with the movie. It's edited fine.
Hmm.
But I think when you look at just like the rest of the field of like the best picture winners, who's not here is more telling as opposed to who is here. That's typically
Yeah.
what I walk away with. And the fact that we have like some heavy favorites like The Brutalist and Conclave and Emilia Perez and even Wicked here, that kind of tells me, like, well, these are probably the big four heavy favorites leaning into the rest of the night. And as we know, depending on the placement of this particular category, whoever wins
Hmm.
this, that might signal a momentum change or might tell us exactly where the Academy is heading when it gets to the later bigger awards throughout the night.
Yeah, sometimes a lot of these awards are just paired to be that way. Like if let's say Brutalist wins for film editing and Adrian Brody gets the award, I'm like, well, might as well start knocking on the door. I think we might know one best. Just sometimes it ends up being like that, and we'll have to see when the night comes. But I do the same thing. I'm like, oh, so these are the 5 movies we're looking at, and it's so interesting too because I don't think anybody necessarily thought that The Substance would get the best film picture of the year. But when I think about editing, that movie is edited crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is The Substance without editing?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. And so yeah, it's just such an indication that like film editing, it really is an important award. Like you said, award, and like you said, not always a direct indicator, but a lot of the times it's like, all right, who's getting this editing award? Because it might spell out what happens by the end of the night and who wins that best picture award. But yeah, in my mind too, this is the big five, like you said, and it just is what it is.
And because it's just so wide open this year, this could be a time in which the film that wins best editing might not actually win best picture. Like that's not a crazy thing to say. Like I could see a world in which Anora wins best editing, because that also is an incredibly edited film. But the likelihood that it wins best picture, I don't know. I don't know if it can go that far with it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a split vote here, where one movie walks away with this award and that movie does turn out to not end up winning best picture. Quickly want to call out best original score: Brutalist, Conclave, Emilia, Perez, Wicked, and The Wild Robot. No challengers here is
crazy. It's
egregious.
Illegal. Should be illegal.
The fact that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross are not here, like this was another moment we could have had a cool ass award, a cool ass moment.
Yeah, they're supposed to win.
It's like, what are we talking about here?
What are we doing?
That's an incredible soundtrack, and that could have been, if that was the only sole nomination, that would be the one where I'm like, okay, at least challengers got in for that. And I do think that movie was somewhat of a phenomenon, and it's going to have a long shelf life, and people are going to talk about it for quite a while. And so that's a missed opportunity, if you ask me. I was not happy about that outcome. Also, best original song. Have you read the news this year that they're not going to be performing any of the original songs during the live telecast? That is
thank God.
That is being suspended this year.
I'm happy about it. I can't lie to you.
You don't want to see the Penis and Vagina song from Emilia Perez perform live. The Vaginoplasty song.
I think clips. It's funny when watching the movie, I think I didn't register that it sounded like that, but when I seen the clip I was like, wait, this is what?
Dude, that clip out of context is crazy.
It's crazy out of context.
The craziest shit out of context. Like in the movie itself, I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I was like, yeah.
But at least you have the context of the story. But out of context, just seeing that clip in isolation, oh my God. So they won't be performing that live this year. We're not going to get any crazy. Yeah, no, that's a whole moment that it turned out to be. That's not the song that it's even now. The Vaginoplasty song is not nominated here. But Emilia Perez did get 2 nominations for El Mal and Mi Camino. But we're not going to see any performances. Instead, the Academy is deciding to pivot and kind of focus on the songwriters through personal reflections, behind the scenes insights. And so they'll probably do some video packages. Okay. And then they have also, acknowledged that they will be spending some time to acknowledge all of the first responders, just everything that's happening in Southern California due to the wildfires over the past few weeks, relief, aid, sort of support and resources that are available, and just highlighting sort of the resilience and the community of LA, and just what the film industry obviously means to that town, means to that particular city. And so that's going to take out probably a significant amount of time, because we would traditionally have a lot of that stuff in the telecast, but ideally that would shave off, maybe like 20 or 25 minutes of a telecast, unless they decide to fill it with other stuff. But that I think inevitably will probably make it a shorter telecast, which I'm kind of here for, if I'm being honest. So
yeah, I'm here for a shorter telecast as well. That's why I was like, oh, thank God, because I'm like, ooh, y'all making this thing long. Usually I'm not too mad at the performances or anything, but it just be like, man, we've been here a long time and now y'all starting to sing. Like, all right, what are we doing? But I think I like the idea of having a package that talks about the actual writers and musicians and composers in things. I like that. I think it's easier, faster to the point. And yeah, let's keep the show going, because it's a long one. So yeah, I'm all for it.
And honestly, now that I'm looking at these nominees, there's none of these that I would want to see perform live. Like I'm not.
Not perform. Like in the movie, some of these are cool.
Yeah, they're cool, but like a live performance in front of an audience and millions of people watching, like as a production, that's a whole nother conversation. I think that they probably looked at these nominees and were like, guys, this will not go well if we put these people on stage. Let's not do this. Let's pivot and do something else this year.
These are also all really sad songs. Like,
hell yeah.
None of these are like El Mal, which is funny because I low key, like, this is like one song in Emilia Perez. I was like, wait, that was actually a decent song.
Yeah.
But I'm like, this is so dark. Like, do y'all realize what we're talking about here? Like, this is hella dark. And so I get part of me just like throw Timothy Chalamet on stage. If y'all want to sing, throw Timothy Chalamet on stage
Yeah.
and let him sing a Bob Dylan song. Let's keep it moving.
I wonder, do you think that they could be? They haven't announced it, and they probably won't. Since let me not say that because anything is possible. Could they be making way for something like that, where it's like, yeah, none of the original songs will be performed, but hey, let's get Timothy Chalamet on stage and do some Bob Dylan. Let's get Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo to do some stuff from Wicked, on stage. Like they could be making way for just more creative, fun stuff like that. Like, yeah, you're not nominated, but we're still celebrating film at the end of the day, and we're going to celebrate the music of these films.
To be honest, that'd be genius. And I think that'll be another thing that, gets viewership up for the Academy Awards. Something like that. Something like Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo singing on stage. It's easy. No, people going to start watching. Are they going to see the clips are going to recycle? Or, and the same with Timothy Chalamet and maybe singing a Bob Dylan song. I think they'd be genius. Do I think they're going to do that? No. But like you said, anything is possible. And I would love for them to do that. That would be really smart for them.
Yeah, they probably won't. It's just, it's also just kind of weird because, like, I'm Just Ken was such a moment last year. Like, Ryan Gosling killed that.
He killed it.
So, on one hand, I think, certain audiences might say, like, well, shit, you kind of cracked the code on how to, like, do it well. But you got to get somebody that's as committed as he is. Like, you got to get somebody that's like, willing to go there and do that. He would do it, absolutely. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande would absolutely do it. Mm-hmm. But then maybe the flip side of the conversation is like, hey, guys, there's no way we can follow that. So let's not even try. Let's just, like, steer away from that. Let's just, like, give it a year off, if we got a new banger song. Because also Wicked next year, Wicked for Good is going to have some original stuff that probably will be eligible to be nominated. But it couldn't get nominated this year because all of the songs were taken directly from the stage play. So, I don't know. It's an interesting conversation overall to have. Those were the big things that I wanted to talk about. Anything else you wanted to point out from some of the other sort of categories that are nominated here? Animated feature film. I mean, we've kind of seen the consistent same five across the board. Mm-hmm. Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, and The Wild Robot. All incredible films.
5 bangers.
5 bangers.
They cooked with animation this year.
Yeah, they did a really good job with these nominees, so I'm happy with all of them. But yeah, anything else you wanted to point out about other nominees, other films that were acknowledged this year?
No, man, not too much. I think I was surprised to see Wild Robot get nominated for sound. That was just I don't know why I just didn't see that coming. I was like, whoa, got nominated for sound. I feel like we don't always see animation get that award or get nominated for sound. So I was very surprised to see the Wild Robot show up there and even see Flow among international feature film. It was like, oh shoot, what? Like it's just weird. It's just interesting when an animated movie gets paired with live action films. It's like, whoa, you actually made it in here. But shout out to I think those are really cool awards to be nominated for. And then of course I'm always looking at visual effects like, ooh, what are we gonna do here? I really don't know. Alien Romulus was nominated here for visual effects, which I think is interesting. And you never know, it could win, but Dune is also part of that. So who knows? But we'll have to see. Also, Kingdom Planet of the Apes is literally a movie of CGI. Like, what? Like, yeah, it's just like, come on, what are we doing? So, yeah, we'll have to see, though. Interesting stuff.
To speak on visual effects, I think So what's interesting on the home video release, they have an incredible special feature where you can watch the movie of just the entire mocap performance of the actors. Like, you don't have to see
the whole thing.
The whole thing with just the entire mocap. And it's actually really good. It's really, really cool. It's like one of the best special features. And so it just showcases like the artistry behind the movie and just like what it takes to pull something like that off. Big surprise in visual effects, Better Man. This movie is being lambasted on social media. It's one of the biggest bombs in the history of Hollywood. I mean, an absolute fucking train wreck financially. It actually just got pulled out of theaters for the most part. And I believe Sony is the distributor. They said that they're not going to report any more box office information because it's a stinker financially. It's just not doing well. Everybody that I know that's seen it actually likes the movie. So I'm not speaking to the quality. And I did see a couple of clips, like sort of like longer clips from the movie. The CGI for the monkey in the movie, the main character playing Robbie Williams, really good stuff. Like,
looks really good.
That looks really good. So I just want to, call that out here. I do want to also go back to international feature film. You reminded me of something here because this is interesting because there's a bit of a showdown between I'm Still Here and Emilia Perez.
Emilia Perez, yeah.
Because they're also both nominated for Best Picture.
Yep.
Are we potentially looking at a situation, which this would not make any sense to me, but could we be looking at a situation in which, let's say, let's say I'm Still Here wins for Best International Feature Film, and then Emilia Perez wins for Best
Mm,
Picture. Can somebody make that make sense to me? Like, what if that happens? Because that is a weird dynamic. I
yeah.
don't know how that works. I feel like if a movie wins International Feature Film and then it's nominated for Best Picture, and if it actually
Mhm.
does win, but like it should be consistent. Like there should not be any breakdown between those two films. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on just like the showdown between those two films in particular.
Yeah, I think we've just seen times in which it feels like a movie loses one category to get something, and then because they know the other movie's going to win. You know what I mean? Like that's the only reason I think that what happened is like Emilia Perez, they're like they know was about to win all these awards, but they still want to recognize I'm Still Here in some way because it might not win any of those other awards, so they give it to I'm Still Here. And I agree, it is weird, but it's like I feel like that's their thought process sometimes, and yeah, it would definitely throw me off, and I'd be like, okay, what what are we doing here? But yeah, it's super weird. And in my mind, the only reason, it's funny that it's nominated. In my mind, I don't see a movie like Flow beating either one of those two movies. I don't know. It's just really interesting how they decide on some of this stuff sometimes.
Yeah, I think this is another one that I'm paying close attention to throughout the night, just as much as film editing, because this actually I think has bigger implications
I
for
think
Best
so.
Picture compared
Hmm.
to previous years, where some like we've seen it have implications, but I think because there are two nominees from Best International Feature that are also in Best Picture, I'm very curious to see who walks away with that award. But yeah, we are definitely approaching the Oscars very soon. The telecast is happening on Sunday, March 2nd. So, of course, we'll be back to break it all down. We're going to give our predictions, our final predictions for all of the nominated categories, all 23 categories, a week before the Academy Awards. And then, of course, after it airs, we'll come back and give all of our reactions and takeaways once it debuts live and we see all of the big winners from the night. So, definitely be on the lookout for that. But if you have any thoughts on our conversation, our reactions to the Academy Awards, or just the nominations in general, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think about them.